Yeah, I have to. I feel so bad.
We still have some on the waiting, employees on the waiting list?
Yeah, we do. Like 3.
3?
We texted
Took
Bobby.
What's that?
because council members were from the tickets.
I didn't think so. Okay.
But we'll.
Yeah, no, I didn't think. Mhm.
We're just waiting to go live, y'all.
It is part of that awkward moment at the beginning of a meeting when we're all silent. Hey, Dudley.
Good morning.
How are you?
Okay. We are live. Good morning, everybody. It's 9:03 on Wednesday, June the 9th. I'd like to call this Personnel Committee meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Our first order of business is approval of the previous meeting's minutes. Do I hear any motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our next item is citizen comments. I don't know if we've had anybody sign up.
We did not.
Okay. We do have a few citizens present. Would anybody like to? We have a 30-minute allotment with a 3-minute maximum. If you'd like to come make any comments. Okie dokie. Moving on to old business. We've got an update on the wage and compensation analysis, and I believe a memo was that provided to everybody or just to me? Okay, everyone should have received a memo from the HR officer with an update. Janice, would you like to give us the executive summary for those at home?
Use this one. So I'm happy to report that we're moving forward with the project. I met with all the department heads and worked on job titles, classification under those categories and how they score for that position. We made some modifications. 2 people are going to go from non-exempt to exempt. And there's probably a good dozen job title changes just to come in more in line with the industry. For example, instead of fire secretary, we've made it administrative assistant. We've also completed the benefit information to them. And then the next step is a solution file, which will contain the recommendation for a pay plan, revision, and salary adjustments. We do owe them a pay scale feedback for the public safety division, which I've drafted some ideas and need to meet with Desiree and the chief.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do you need any guidance or direction from us? I didn't sense any.
No, and a lot of the guidance that we have received came from the work. When we had the budget workshop and we had the representative from Evergreen, there were some questions, directional questions that you all provided guidance on. And one of the topics that were discussed there was evaluating sort of a hybrid pay scale plan just for public safety based on just comparing it to how other communities handle. So that's sort of what spending that we need to work on with Evergreen. I know that Janice and Chief have had some discussions about how that could look like. And we need to prepare that, submit it to them, and then get feedback from them. But that would only apply to police and fire based on the conversation we had with you all a couple months ago.
Okay. I guess the only question then I have is any expectation of timing? I mean,
Do we have? Yeah.
Okay.
So unfortunately, no. I mean, I was looking at the list that, the time frame list that was put out and updated in April. We're a little bit behind again still, but that's kind of to be expected only because we're waiting for data information to be massaged by them. I'm hoping that the pay stuff, the next section will happen in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Okay, any, oh, no. All right. Our next old business is item B, discussion of the referendum question on reducing the size of city council. All right, and Desiree, would you like to kind of kick off what we need to discuss?
Sure. So your packets includes the same one page of attachment that we shared with you all back last month with City Council that pretty much just has a simple question for the referendum, which would be, should the Isle of Palm City Council consider a reduction in the number of council to a mayor and 6 council members? So you all would be asking that question of the community in November. The deadline for the city to submit that question to the Charleston Board of Elections Commission is in mid-August. So that would, in terms of timeline, the city council would have to approve an ordinance by end of July so that that could be presented to Charleston County Board and Elections Commission. So this is a proposed question. By law, the question has to be a single issue and a simple question on a single issue, not multiple issues, which is something that I think I reported on last month. There were some conversations or questions of whether or not the city should also consider asking the community about districts or how members are elected on our community, but we wouldn't be able to add that to this question. We'd have to wait 2 years to ask a similar question via referendum. I think that the discussion that I'm expecting or would encourage you all to have is provide some direction on how the reduction in council members would work. That would be included in the ordinance. It would not be included in the referendum question presented. But, part of the information to the public is how would this reduction happen? And we've provided to you all some options of how other communities have done it. One option was presented by the Chair Moy last month, I believe, of how that reduction could work. And then we've also included an attachment to an ordinance from the town of Fort Lawn, who considered a similar question several years ago. The referendum failed, but I wanted to share with you all another alternative of how the reduction would work, which is included as option 2. I'm sure there are other options that, we can consider. This is something that's been reviewed by the city attorney and provided by the city attorney. So again, it could look at different ways. It's really up to how, what you all decide and what you want to present to the community.
So presumably we'll have a timeline for how council handles this, right? So I understand the end dates, but we've got to back into the process to have it in front of council, frankly, fairly quickly.
It would be at the end of this month at
Yeah,
the city
okay.
council meeting in June. Correct.
Yeah, because I think the broader conversation is what are the advantages and disadvantages of a downsized council? And I'm sure everybody's being asked that question.
And I would say that that's a question for city council to
Correct.
answer, not staff.
Agreed.
We can provide as much information and examples as possible, but I would be, very careful and
It's-
I think that that's certainly a conversation that the policy setting body should entertain.
So for today, you need us to, the question that has how should the reduction
Correct.
occur? Will not be the referendum question. That will be part of the ordinance. So we make that decision essentially. And you want personnel to make a recommendation to council as to what direction we.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Anybody have a strong recommendation?
I'm going to defer to the chair on this one.
Well, I mean, I suggested that one last time we spoke. I think actually that the one change I would make from my initial recommendation was instead of explicitly stating 1 seat is a 2-year term, just do the rank order like the option 2. It's a little bit of a hybrid, but
Mm.
essentially stating that the first, we'll have four folks up for election. The highest four win, the lowest of those four would have a 2-year term. So that term would set to expire in 2023, and then same thing for the following election, where you would, I don't know, maybe that's exactly what,
So the
No,
option
the option
two
two
is
is-
everybody runs,
Yeah,
all members run.
that
in a-
feels like it feels a little confusing to me. Like all of a sudden, everybody's running again. So that means somebody whose term hasn't yet set to expire is going to be rerunning. Right?
Pretty much, yeah.
That is-
Depending on the year
What-
that you set it up to
Yeah,
start.
John, so I understand, would mean a shortened term for
For-
somebody who has won a 4-year term.
Exactly.
I don't
That's what I
think
don't
that
like.
makes any
Yeah,
sense.
agreed.
Yeah.
That, so I think going in with the expectation, if I win 4th position, I have a 2-year term.
Yeah.
For those, so for 2 election cycles, that would happen, and then we would be back to after that.
A
things would be-
normalized schedule.
So you're suggesting sort of a hybrid between option one and option two in terms of process or structure.
So that
For those
at your
elected.
point of election, you know exactly the term
That
that you
you're-
have accepted.
Mhm.
I would agree with that because I would not support anything that shortens an elected term.
No. Great.
Okay, well, I'll get with the city attorney to draft something to present to you all, to city council at the end of the month it would be for first reading.
I'm just sitting here grinning because these 4 years fly by, right?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It only has to happen one election cycle because then you
Correct,
just drop
yeah.
a seat at the second one.
Correct.
I totally misspoke.
Okay,
If I might, how did we handle the original question? Because that brought up the fact that the discussion wasn't, that the mayor had made a motion for discussion about changing the size of orders. Is that,
yeah. So we pulled that up and Nicole went back and listened to the audio, and the motion was to reduce the size of council.
Okay.
And part of the discussion was to do it as part of a referendum, ask the
Okay.
community.
Got
So maybe his intent was different, but the way that the motion was made and the discussion was made, was,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay. It sounds like I don't know, do you need a motion? Or
I don't think,
Okay.
yeah,
So,
it's good.
Randy, Ryan, you guys feel good
No,
about
good,
it?
thank you.
All right, good deal. Moving on to new business. We have item A, interview of a candidate for city attorney. And you've got a packet from Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd on your desk. And Desiree, I'll hand it to you.
So we have on the agenda, discussion of this interview to happen in executive session as part of the contractual, proposed or contractual, arrangements. So I would recommend that, maybe the committee want to entertain a motion to go into executive session to have that conversation now.
I know
Or
we
we,
have-
Yeah, before we do that, can we just add some front-end context to what
Oh,
we're
sure.
doing? It's not an executive session. And
Sure.
Desiree, if I may, I think the discussion that we've all had before is not just around interviewing for an attorney, with Jim Henchy leaving shortly. But, what is the sort of future legal strategy and positioning of the city in regards to its legal requirements? Because this past year has been fraught with numerous FOIA requests, lawsuits in both directions, multifaceted. It's not just real estate, it's everything from the beach access group to real estate to intransigent tenants. And frankly, the suggestion, and we had discussed it at the committee level, was, what do we need? I mean, what are we looking at as a city? Because we seem to be reaching out to firms or individuals to handle individual select instances, rather than recognizing that the city has changed, the environment has changed, and a more broad-based approach might be appropriate for the city. So I'm good with the executive session, and I mean, if we want to do that now, I'll make a motion to go into executive session. But I did think it deserves some public commentary on the front end.
And just for the record, as you all know, our current city attorney, he will be closing his private practice very soon. So we're still working, engaged with him until the city council appoints a new legal representation for government. So thank you, Randy, for that.
And I'll make the formal motion that in accordance with South Carolina Code Section 30-44-70A1, that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters related to the candidate for the city attorney.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.